Hello everybody and welcome out to Pod of War Retro 5th Gen chat. Today I'm joined as ever by Masofdas.
Hi everyone.
I am of course EOFGizmo. I will be your host today. But first of all, Chris, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you.
It's been good. This time we haven't taken like a year to do the next podcast.
Yeah.
It's only been a few months between this one, so that's good. So yes, what have you been playing, Chris, outside of the 5th Gen?
Playing recently, like the last sort of week or two. Batman: The Enemy Within, the Telltale series.
That's the sequel.
It's the second season. I ended up mainly playing Bruce Wayne due to my choices on that. I felt was the right choices.
Obviously, no spoilers.
Yeah.
People haven't played it.
So I played some of that. Played a bit of Ni no Kuni 2. I haven't gone back to it since like the first couple of days it came out.
I'm absolutely shocked that you would say that, Chris.
Yeah. Played some Panzer Dragoon Auto on the Xbox One through backwards compatibility, so that's pretty good.
Panzer Dragoon will get mentioned in the next hour or so.
It's a really expensive game now, so I bought the download version. Looks really good as well on the One X, and just started playing yesterday God of War on the PS4. Which is very good. I think I played it 7-8 hours straight yesterday.
Which means you won't play it again. You'll move on to the next game.
No,
now.
I think this is
move on to Yakuza 6.
It's like really like sort of like one of those games that's like really grabbed me. So I think I'm gonna be playing that until it's done. And then I'll be like, what are we gonna play? Oh, Labo is next Friday. So.
Oh god. Well, the complete contrast. What I've been playing since the last podcast. I've been playing Metroid Prime for an upcoming show that we're doing.
Oh, I did play a bit of that, but I didn't know if I wanted to talk about that or not.
No, but we have played that. There'll be a show. There'll be a new show next week.
Yeah.
At the minute, I think it's called A Game a Month, but I may change that. But that's coming next week.
Yeah, but that's not a very great name, is it?
It was probably like, you can't call it Gaming Book Club, because everyone's just like, oh, it's not. So what book are you reading? There's so many books. Like, well, it's not a book club. It's book club. It's tough. I need to come up with a better name. But anyway, that's happening next week. I've been playing mostly old games and certain games, which I'll talk about in a minute. But yeah, I've been playing Sonic Adventure on the Dreamcast. I've been playing like random ass GameCube games like Crazy Taxi and stuff like that.
I can't play on Dreamcast. GameCube.
I don't have it on Dreamcast
I think
yet.
it's Soundcraft, that's it.
No, probably not. I can't remember really. No, I don't think it does. I played V-Rally 2 on my Dreamcast because I love V-Rally, as you well know. And then I've been playing lots of Switch recently. Been getting back into my Switch. I've been playing ARMS competitively again. Really getting good at that now. Really enjoy the multiplayer, and the Party Crash modes are really cool. They've added some really cool leaderboard stuff now, so that's good.
Yeah.
Splatoon 2 I'm still playing. I'm trying to get my rank up so I can play League Battles, but my god, is it a pain in the ass to play that game. Just because you can't group with friends. It's the only thing I hate about that game, but I'm looking forward to the DLC, so I'll be playing that. And more importantly, which I know you've been playing, we didn't talk about it in your section. I've been playing Football Manager Touch 2018.
Yeah.
A game which I've basically told you about, I don't know, 9 months ago that it was coming. So now when it finally come out, a bit random, they decided to do it this year. I presumed they were going to do next year's game, but I reckon it's just a tester.
2019.
That's why it's only digital. I mean, it's just a test bed, see what people think. I've been playing a fucking ton of that game. I've played like 10 hours of that game. It's already my second most played Switch game, I think, already. Yeah. Because I'm doing Gloucester City in the Conference South because I'm a real man.
Yeah.
In the playoffs.
Nice.
I might even stream that later because I've got nothing to do later.
Cool.
But yeah, other than that, that's really it. I suppose been sort of toying with Sea of Thieves this morning, which is okay, but you totally need people to play with.
Saying that you've been playing on Game Pass, I did recently play and finish Late Shift on Game Pass.
Late Shift.
Yeah.
Said really slowly.
I've
heard that's good.
It's a full motion video.
Well, this is perfect. What a perfect time to talk about that.
From Wells Interactive.
Shout out to Martin and Tim. I don't even know if they still work there, but shout out to those.
I can't even remember which ones I've met. I've met like a couple of them.
I went to university with almost all of them.
Yeah, I played that. I say play because obviously it's full motion video. It's just a film.
You watched it?
Yeah, I watched it, and then at the bottom you get like two choices. And you either like press A for choice 1 or B for choice 2, and that's like the only game part of it. But obviously, you make choices you kind of want to re-watch it to get the other bit. And so it's kind of weird because, like, would you re-watch a film 7 times?
Yes. It was Mike Bassett, England manager.
Yeah, sort of like in the row. So it's sort of a strange
it's like
one.
The heavy rain thing, I guess. They try and get them off.
Yeah, but I think that sort of works better in a game than a film.
That did remind me though.
Yeah.
You talking about what's attractive? I've also been playing Cube 2,
Mm.
which I'm in the credits.
Yeah.
I'm in the credits wrong,
Yeah.
and it's hilarious. So if you play that game and you can find it, screenshot it and send it to me, because I always find it really amusing. A shout out to my boy Dave Hall for spelling my name wrong twice in the same line, especially because it's under quality assurance, which is the bit that I find the funniest bit. They just get my name wrong twice in quality assurance. But yeah, I've been playing Cube 2, obviously because I've helped out a little bit. It's a bit, take everything I say about that game as a pinch of salt, but it's pretty good. It's a lot better than the first one.
Yeah,
it's basically Portal.
It's good, but are you in the credits of Ukulele?
No, but I didn't pay money to be in the Cube credits. That's the difference. I didn't pay money to. I've not paid money to be in any Kickstarter thing like you. So apart from Psychonauts 2 when it comes out,
I'm actually good in the. I'm in the credits of a game that came out last week. Melancholy Republic on Steam.
Was it a kickback
game?
Was it?
Yeah. But I am on the credits. So I own that game. Not played it yet.
Yeah,
I should be in the credits.
You own a game. See, when I say I'm in the credits, I'm in the actual credits. I'm not in the thank yous. I'm actually a credit.
Yeah.
Chris does this thing where if you say something, he has to try and one up you. It's so annoying. Ugh. We'll talk about that, and we'll do another podcast about that. That'll be next week when you've played Metro Prime for an hour, and you get shamed next week and have to sit there quietly for 45 minutes.
Yeah, I might need to host that if you two played it more.
Maybe we'll see. We'll maybe make you play it more. We'll force you. Right, but anyway, 5th gen chat. So this is the kind of the penultimate gen we're probably going to talk about. I can't see us doing 7th just yet. Maybe 7th has got a chance. 8th definitely not. But 7th maybe. Well, I don't know yet. I don't think it's too soon. We're definitely doing 6th.
Yeah.
6th will be in 2 parts. So there will be a Dreamcast part because simply there's no way me and Chris can do 6th gen and not spend an hour just talking about the Dreamcast. So there will be a Dreamcast part and then the 6th gen part, and then we'll figure out what the hell we're doing afterwards. But today we're doing the 5th gen. We're not going to talk about, because quite simply we haven't played it. We don't know enough about the FM Towns Marty, which was the first one.
Yeah, I've not even seen one, and I own everything.
The Pippin.
Yeah.
And the Amiga CD32.
Yeah.
Now,
what about the Playdia?
Playdia is not a thing. So okay, Christus is madness. So obviously, you completely throw me off. And obviously, there's a weird the PC Engine sequel thing that's got 5
PC
games. PC Engine FX or whatever it was. They didn't come out in anywhere but Japan. Did really badly because we just haven't played them. The Amiga CD32. I've played quite a lot of the games on it, but I played it on the Amiga 1200 and the Amiga CD.
The one thing with the Pippin is obviously that's an Apple system. Everyone goes on about Apple should make a console.
Yeah, they didn't. It's crap. And the only where it sold well was in Japan when it was a Namco system.
But it does have a really good version of Marathon.
Yeah, but again, you can play Marathon on absolutely everything, including 360.
Yeah, they released on 360.
We're not going to talk about them.
But it's one of those weird,
whatever.
does have a good version or something.
Yeah, but neither of us have ever seen one, probably.
No, because if it looks at the first console of the 5th gen, that had really good versions of some things, very similar to the Pippin.
Well, I guess people actually played it.
Yeah.
That's the difference. I've been around games for 28 years. You the same. I've never seen a Pippin game case. I've never even seen a Pippin. I may have seen a Pippin controller. I've never seen an actual Pippin game case. So I imagine it's just a boxed PC box. So what we're going to talk about first is one of my favourite consoles. Actually, to be fair, the 5 consoles we're talking about, me and you all actually kind of like.
Yeah.
So it's going to be quite an interesting one. We're going to start with the 3DO Interactive Multiplayer.
Yeah.
Which came out in 1993.
Yeah.
By the 3DO company, shocking of all.
Run by some guy.
Run by Trip Hawkins.
Yeah,
Trip was a former EA bigwig. And when EA were not trash. But that's another conversation for another day. So I suppose the most interesting thing about the 3DO is that it's not self-built hardware, in that the 3DO company didn't build the 3DO. They sort of licensed it out, which we'll talk about later for how well it did. But so Panasonic is the famous one. Did the FC1, the FC1, FC10,
Gold Star,
and Gold Star did one. Sanyo did one as well.
Yeah. So JCC,
I think they did in Japan. Over here, really, it's the
Panasonic.
It's the Panasonic ones. I don't think any of the other ones came out over here. I might be wrong. Maybe Gold Star did, but I think Panasonic is the Europe, really the ones that Europeans will know. It had some interesting things. It had a pretty standard controller. It was basically a Super Nintendo controller, which was which was okay. From what we've both played 3DOs. Have you played a 3DO actual controller?
Yeah, I've played one.
So like they're pretty nice. Weirdest thing, obviously, there was only one controller port. You had to daisy chain the controllers together. Yeah, whatever. We used CD-ROM technology, like pretty much everything on did apart from one on this list. It was an overall fairly powerful machine, really.
Yeah.
Its biggest problem, it had one big problem, Chris, and that was that it was very expensive. It was $700 at launch.
Yeah. Which apparently in 2017 would have been...
It's over £1,000 now.
Yeah.
If you compare that to the nearest price to that is the Saturn, which was $400. So you're already starting out, you're $300 more expensive. And that is purely because it wasn't built by 3DO. So when Nintendo make a console, they can sell it at a loss because they'll get licenses from the games. 3DO couldn't do that, and obviously they had a really low license fee, so I think it was $3 compared to Nintendo's $15. So they were it was easy for developers to get stuff on there, but like they didn't make much money out of it, and that was really one of the big problems. The 3DO, I think, in the last decade and a half has kind of got like a bit of a reputation for being shit, mostly because of like AVGN and people like that. But to be honest with you, it's actually not that bad a library. I mean, you've looked at the library a few times.
Yeah, and it's actually a really decent library. When I go back to the Pippin of Marathon, he's got like the best version of Street Fighter 2 on there at the time.
So the Street Fighter 2 Turbo, wasn't it?
Yeah, and like the FIFA's on it's good, the Gex on it's good. Basically all the EA games plus an odd few others.
Well, to begin with, they had a very close relationship with EA because obviously Trip Hawkins was still running EA at the time. So they had pretty much most of the games came out for it first. You had the very first Need for Speed. Like you said, Road Rash is probably my favourite game on the console, but it's a great game. FIFA and Madden were on there, looked great. Theme Park, all those kind of things were really good. But you're right, it had some really good ports. It had Street Fighter Turbo, which at the time was the best version of that game.
Yeah.
I had Samurai Shodown 2 as well, which is Neo Geo port, which was really a really good version. The controller was a bit wank for it, to be honest, but you could get an adapter to use a Super Nintendo controller and stuff. Obviously had a lot of FMV games at the time, had a lot of porn, which is quite funny, and was now is very well known for having quite a massive porn collection, which is really funny. But it had some interesting games as well. It had stuff like Wing Commander, which was really good.
It also had the classic Plumbers Don't Wear Ties.
Plumbers Don't Wear Ties, great game, best-selling game. But yeah, overall the console was pretty good. And the best game is Gex, arguably, and the best-selling game is certainly Gex, over 1 million. That was... Originally, it wasn't exclusive. It was kind of like their attempt. It was Crystal Dynamics who made it. Yeah. And it was like their sort of attempt at a mascot. And it was a really good side scroller, to be fair. And that version of it is actually pretty good. It did come to everything else afterwards, I think. It definitely came to PlayStation.
Yeah, I only ever remember playing Gex and 3D on PlayStation.
Yeah, the 3D ones were on everything. I think they were on N64, PS1, maybe even Dreamcast. I don't think so. Maybe it was a little bit early for Dreamcast.
No, I don't think it is.
But yeah, so our experience with the 3D. Well, neither of us have owned a 3DO because they're very expensive now. Like, they were expensive then. Cause realistically, I'd want to get an FC10 if I was going to buy one, the top loader, because it's more reliable. Though the FC1 is a beautiful console. Yeah. But yeah, they are very hard to get hold of. I've had quite a decent 3DO game collection, which I've talked on the show before, and I've emulated it quite a lot. I'm actually quite a big fan of the 3DO. I think it has a good library. I think, to be honest, I think every console on here has a good library. Yeah. But compared to the 4th gen weird stuff that we talked about, like the 32X and the Mega CD
and CDI
and the CDI, it's far better than those consoles.
Yeah.
They're really
if
good.
It was like, if it is out the gen before, it could be like a really good
because it came out in '93, which is obviously very early. So it was like it's a weird sort of time. I think if it had been '92 or maybe '94, and they'd had a bit more time, I think it would have done a lot better. But yeah, it actually ran until '96. It had a really good library. The games themselves are actually pretty good to get now. Yeah. Not expensive, really.
I don't think there's anything real expensive.
Not really.
Maybe like the Wing Commander.
Wing Commander you can give like 20, 30, which is really for an obscure console is pretty decent. There isn't that killer title. I think that's the biggest problem with the 3DO in terms of, because obviously me and Chris like to talk about collecting the consoles now and when we do these videos. Like that's probably the biggest thing I would say is there's nothing on the 3DO you can't get elsewhere, really. To be perfectly honest, it's worth getting. Like, most stuff is on PS1, or it's on the Jaguar, or it's on something else. Like I like Cannon Fodder, but that game's on everything. I like Theme Park, that game's on everything. It's a cool piece of kit, and it's a really nice collection. The discs and the
and it's not a very big library, so I suppose you want to try the full set.
It's over 200, I believe.
Yeah, but still quite small.
And a lot of it is like, I think the stuff that is expensive is like the weird like porn games, like the Coven and stuff like that. And that's the same for like the Saturn. You get there. But yeah, it's a pretty good console. Would I recommend collecting it now? If you can get a console for less than £150, yes, but you won't. That's the problem. If you can find a console in the wild for £150, like it's actually a pretty good console to collect for. It has good outputs, has like RGB and S-video and stuff. They built it to be a multimedia device, so it has actually has stereo out ports natively on the back of the console, so that's really cool. And it has a built-in power supply, so you haven't got to worry about that kind of jazz. I believe it's region free.
Yeah, I think
so
it is.
If you can get a step-down converter, getting a Japanese one's actually pretty cheap. But yeah, I quite like the 3DO. I've been on this show many times and said how much I like the 3DO, but yeah, what do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I sort of agree. It's one of those weird ones I've not owned. I kind of would like to own one, but I would want to pick one up for like 50, 60 quid, which isn't happening.
No, it's not.
Unless I saw one with like a really good bundle or something. Like I went into like Insane Games or something. I went for like 150, but I had like 10 games or something with it because no one's going to buy the games separately, sort of thing. That's the only way I think I'm ever going to get one. But like you say, all the best games are on something out, or like the Street Fighter 2 was the best version. It's been improved sort of since, and the money we spent on that I can buy the Switch anniversary collection.
Yeah,
or something.
it's totally a console. It's like a showpiece console.
Yeah.
So if you want to be like, realistically, if I were to buy a 3DO, I'd want to do videos on the 3DO constantly. So to like get my money for it, you know.
Yeah.
But again, and it plays copied games as well, so you don't even have to buy the games. That's the weird thing. If you can get the console, it's okay. So that's one underrated, underappreciated console. On to possibly the most underrated, most underappreciated console I think of our lifetime, and that is the Atari Jaguar. Well, I know American people hate the way the British people say it because we say the Jaguar properly. Yeah, it's an Atari Jaguar. The Jaguar came out in, I believe, 94. Just let me check. Came out in 93 as well in America, so only a month difference with the 3DO, which is very interesting. It was only $250. Yeah, so already you think pretty good. Atari are quite a well-known gaming company at the time. They weren't hated like they are now. Like,
well, you say that they had a big gap of nothing. The crash.
Yeah, the thing is that it's really interesting because over here, they kept making personal computers. So over here, actually, Atari was quite well respected, and actually, I think the Jaguar did okay in Europe. But in America, I know they had the video game crash, and they had the 7800 came out like 2 years before that no one bought. But in Europe, at least, like,
and they should have like the Panther was supposed to be.
The Panther was supposed to be in between, and then you had the one after. You obviously just had the Atari Lynx. Yeah. Obviously, the Jaguar was developed by the Lynx team, David Needle and MG Aisha, I think he was called, who worked for Amiga. Great guys, like really talented British programmers. Well, they might have done the 3DO actually. It might be Epix that did the Jaguar, but either way, some British guys did it both consoles. It was actually a cartridge-based console. Although it did have a CD add-on later on, we'll talk about later on. Came out, did okay. Numbers not amazing sales-wise. Its best-selling game is Alien vs Predator, which is probably the game it's known for.
Which is absolutely fantastic.
See, we'll talk about that because actually I owned a Jaguar in the 90s. I had one for about a year before my parents rightly sold it and got a PS1. And I never played Alien vs Predator. So if I was going to talk about the Jaguar's best game, I'd talk about Tempest 2000, which I absolutely love. And I actually did buy Tempest 3000 for the PS1 when we got PS1 because I love that game so much. But the Jaguar's weird because it actually has a really good library in Europe. Yeah. Because it had some late ports, so it had Cannon Fodder, it had Worms actually, and
Rayman.
Rayman's the big one. I mean, I didn't know that at the time because I got Rayman on PS1.
Rayman's better on Jag, I think.
PS1 has it loads better on Jag, but PS1 has the FMV stuff.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, they pretty much think it's an absolutely beautiful game. Especially because the Jaguar is actually capable of outputting in RGB. Yeah. It's just not natively built in. And the console is actually a really weird design. It's got like exposed boards on the back for the SCART lead. So many people just think that it doesn't have SCART, but it does. You just have to get these weird cables. But yeah, there was a lot of games. There was actually a really decent amount of games. So the biggest problem with the Jaguar was had a very complex internal system, which is a problem for a console later as well. But this is more so. And so a lot of people would use. There was basically 3 chips. There was Tom and Jerry, which the known ones are the 232 bits, and there was a Motorola 16-bit one which sort of controlled it. Yeah. And that was the same CPU of a Mega Drive. So what developers would do is they'd just make games for the Mega Drive chip. So you had a lot of 2D games come out. So I think at the time,
like the Worms, the Cannon Fodder.
Exactly. Whereas at the time, everyone
and Theme Hospital.
Theme Hospital, especially, yeah. Everyone at the time was going on about it being 64-bit. That was the big thing. It didn't look like it. No. Do the maths. Yeah. Which should be your Twitter thing. Yeah. You should have your face on that woman. Yeah. Do the maths. Yeah. But it should be on your Tinder profile, Chris. Or Grindr. We don't discriminate. But you've lost my track.
Yeah.
But yeah, it had some pretty good games, but it was pretty hampered by its name, I think. And Atari had no money. They were just pissing money at that point. There was a planned VR headset, which was actually very good apparently, but that got canned. Obviously, the CD-ROM came up very late and had like 25 games on it.
Yeah.
It was quite unknown for being very unreliable, very finicky. And the games on the CD were not good, really.
I think like Highlander's like one of the best games on it.
That's terrible, that's terrible. It's like a bad Alone in the Dark port. Alone in the Dark was also on the 3DO, completely forgot to talk about that. But weirdly, much like the Dreamcast and the PS1 to a much lesser extent, the Jaguars actually had a weird post-life because of the CD add-on. Actually still gets a reasonable amount of indie games released for it.
Yeah.
And homebrew games especially. Even now, I mean, the Jaguar was only around for about 2-3 years. And that's 20 years ago. And people still make games for the CD add-on.
You still got an old cartridge game here now.
You get the odd one here and there, Same as like the Mega Drive and stuff like that. You still get them. But yeah, the Jaguars is funny. It's actually a really funny console.
Yeah, I really like the Jag. I've always said it's like my favourite worst system.
Yeah.
In fact, it kind of makes sort of a sense. Because it has got, you got your Tempest 2000, you've got your Breakout 2000, your Alien vs Predator. I quite liked her.
Had a very good version of Doom. A very good version of Wolfenstein 3D.
Wolfenstein. There's a few other titles like that. Just the thing is, I think there's only like 15 to 20 really good
Atari
games.
Carts is pretty good.
Yeah, and then there's like some real rubbish like Cybermorph.
Of course, and the sequel to Cybermorph, which was on
the CD.
On the CD drive. So we'll get straight into it. For collecting the Jaguar, now I actually think it's probably better to collect for than the 3DO because it's not quite as expensive.
No, the system's cheaper, the games are dearer.
Yeah, because it's cartridge. Yeah. But you can get the console for, I've seen them for around 150, even a little bit lower actually for a decent bundle.
Yeah.
It did quite well in Europe, so there was actually more units than there are of the 3DO. And like you said, it's a really interesting console. The hardest thing I think for collecting is to get a complete box collection. It's quite hard because of the cardboard cases. Yeah,
see, like if I went out and wanted AVP, I would want a box version. Yeah. I would want it with all three covers for the controller. That's the thing we didn't talk about. The controller is
had a keypad.
Had a keypad,
like the ColecoVision,
and then you had these plastic slips that used to go over the keypad, a bit like. Was it Vectrex or something? One of the old consoles used to put it on top on
the Vectrex you did, but the Magnavox. Honestly.
Yeah, you put it over like the keypad and it like
it's hotkeys, isn't it? Basically?
Yeah, hotkeys, and it would go, oh, this is the fight, like in Alien vs Predator or something like, oh, this is your camo for your Predator. This is to free your grenade. It's kind of sort of clever, but you obviously find them quite often missing.
Yeah. That's the hardest thing. I think if you're going to go cartridge only, I don't think it's that bad a console to collect for. I'm not that fussed by cartridge only. I couldn't my N64 collection is almost entirely cartridge only.
Yeah.
So that's not, and my Super Nintendo as well. So I'm not that worried about it. But that can be an issue for collecting. If you're going to spend a lot of money on a game collection, I get it. You want to get it looking nice on your shelf.
Yeah, the hotkeys would definitely be one.
And the hotkey stuff is like I said, I'm sure you can get them reprinted, but like to have like an actual official one is kind of, especially with stuff like Doom, where I know it works well.
Yeah, Doom, and like I said, AVP was the big one because all three characters played differently. Yeah. So you used your hotkey and go, this was what button 1 now does for that character.
Yeah, and even if you didn't have that, like if you got complete box, you probably got a manual and stuff you can read. So I think in 2018, the Jaguar is probably a decent console to collect for. Certainly not on the level of the 3 we're going to talk about now, just because of ease of getting it.
Yeah.
But I'd say the Jaguar is probably slightly more collectible than the 3DO, though I personally prefer the 3DO.
It's a weird one. Jag, you're going to buy a cheaper console but dearer games. 3DO, you're going to buy dearer console but cheaper.
3DO is the big initial
investment. And again, what games you want.
Exactly. I think the Atari has more games for it.
More like
exclusives, especially stuff like Atari carts and like Rayman.
What else did AVP come to apart from PC?
That version of AVP just PC.
Yeah, exactly.
They've done games since, but that version of the game,
not as good.
No, and it has some really good ports. That's the thing about the Jaguar. It has some really good ports because it's it was a powerhouse. So right. Now we're on to the third one. This is probably the last. This is a weird console because it's between the sort of unknown forgottenness of the other two and the sort of mainstream of the last two.
Yeah.
But realistically, it is slap bang in the middle. And it, of course, is the Sega Saturn.
Yeah.
Very strange console. Right, so that came out over here in Japan in 2004. In 1994.
Yeah.
Jesus. Came over to the West in 95. Famously, America jumped the gun and had it early.
Yeah.
We still even had it earlier because it wasn't due till September. We had it in July in the EU.
Yeah.
Obviously, it was the follow-up to the Mega Drive.
Yeah.
Which should have made it really big, but as we'll talk about in a minute,
it came out with no games.
It didn't. Yeah, well, it came out with essentially Virtua Fighter a gimped version of Virtua Fighter and a gimped version of Daytona USA. Sort of its main and Clockwork Knight. I think was that launch title. Or was that very early? I think it might have been.
I think it was really early.
Yeah. And it just, I don't know. I think the Saturn's biggest problem. We'll talk about it straight away.
It had no Sonic.
Doesn't have a Sonic game, like a true Sonic game. It has Sonic Jam, which is great.
Yeah.
Has Sonic R, which isn't even really that bad if you actually play it.
Sonic 3D.
Sonic 3D Blast, which was also on.
We're on a UK podcast. It's Flicky's Island.
See, I have it on PC, and it's called 3D Blast on PC.
You're not an American.
I know. I have my. That's the thing. My Saturn collection is almost entirely PC games because they did PC ports at the time. Its best-selling game is Virtua Fighter 2, which is a great game. We don't know that. Still, even now, is a good game. Just doesn't have that killer game. And that's really its biggest problem. I think it's got a lot of good games.
Yeah.
It's got games people forget are on it. So Resident Evil's on it.
Yeah.
Tomb Raider's on it.
Yeah.
Wipeout. 2 of the Wipeout games are on it. Stuff like that. Symphony of the Night is on it.
Yeah.
People
only in Japan.
Yeah, but people just forget.
Yeah.
People just forget that it came out on it.
Well, in Japan, it was still really big.
In Japan, it did really well. Japan has like 2,000 games. I think,
and it still had like games up until like, I don't know, 2000 or something.
Like now. Yeah.
And I think JVC did like a really cheap one. I say cheap, but I think it's actually more expensive now. But it's like you could buy it in supermarkets or something in Japan. It was like really weird.
Yeah, and it's funny because they got the Japan launch right. So the Japanese had a nicer controller, which we then got later on because the controller it came with pants. I actually played it at the time with my cousin, and he had a Saturn. I'd been playing Loaded. And games like that, and being like, this is just like a weird Mega Drive, and I was like, this is cool, but it's a weird Mega Drive. V Rally, Sega Rally was really good on it. Kind of games I like to play. It had some weird transparency issue because it wasn't really built for 3D.
No.
Again, much like the Jaguar had a dual processor setup, which was really hard to program for, but it was a 2D powerhouse, like stuff like Guardian Heroes.
Anyone play any fighting game.
Fighting game, especially even the 3D
If you couldn't afford a Neo Geo, the Saturn was like your next best option. Because it was like,
and it was very easy to make region free as well.
Yeah, you just put an action replay 4 and 1 in the back.
And there you go.
That was its biggest crime. It had this thing in the back for a memory card. If they had made it backwards compatible with Mega Drive, I think it would have.
Well, that was the original plan.
Yeah.
And when we get to the Dreamcast, we have a very similar story about the Dreamcast. But yeah, I mean, even when I was a kid, I presumed that was a Mega Drive slot or a 32X slot or something that would have made sense. But yeah,
that's where you put a memory card.
You just put a memory card. Yeah, it's weird. It had a weird memory.
So you put a VCD adapter in
that
there.
Was in the back.
Yeah,
that was the back because it had a battery powered memory, which was terrible because the battery ran out. It was a watch battery. You still ran. It was really easy to change, but it would run out straight away and you lose your saves. So having that action replay was really important for saves anyway. But yeah, the Saturn was pretty cool. Over here, it came out with horrendous cardboard boxes. The exposed cases were really bad. And really, again, when we get to the collecting bit, it's really the big issue I think with Saturn. Over here, anyway. As for our experience, like I said, I played it when I was younger. I did play it at the time. I actually quite liked the Saturn at the time. I played it with my cousin. It was very different to the PlayStation that I had. I had some really fun games like Virtual Cop was really cool. I think Die Hard Arcade was on it as well. It was pretty fun. I remember that was a great beat 'em up. It had a good library, but just didn't have like Nice Into Dreams is the big one, obviously.
Yeah. Had some really decent, like you say, like the
really good arcade ports.
They did fix, but it's mainly Sega arcade games,
which is just Sega.
And I think that was sort of like that sort of game was dying out. What people wanted when you look at the other two systems,
especially when we get to the Dreamcast chat next time.
Yeah,
because that's Sega was an arcade company, so they were always prevalent. They did have games that weren't arcadey, so they had. Both the Panzer Dragoon games. Well, I had 3, but we'll talk about the ones that we were physically able to see. So Panzer Dragoon and Panzer Dragoon Zwei. Great on-rail shooters. Really, in my opinion, were way better. Way miles ahead of Star Fox at the time.
I was going to say that.
Or Star Wing, as it is.
And like, obviously just playing Panzer Dragoon Orta, it's like, it's so much better than Star Fox.
The Panzer Dragoon franchise is one of those that I really wish that they'd come back to. I think they will.
Yeah.
The way that Sega are at the minute. I think they will come back to Panzer Dragoon. They also did an RPG called Panzer Dragoon Saga, which is the rarest game on the console, probably arguably. Certainly in PAL regions, it's very hard to get hold of. It's very, from what I've played, because I've played some emulated, it's really hard to emulate a Saturn, so it's difficult.
That's the problem with that one. They lost the source code.
They have lost the source code, so they'd have to ROM it, which would be nearly impossible for them to remake. So.
Yeah, I don't know really, because obviously they
could do it.
Sega just now, Sega Aegis, like, put a Saga on it. It's like, oh yeah, it's because it's like this weird thing. But there's I've played Panzer Dragoon Saga. I've played because they released really strangely. As far as I'm aware, disc 1, there was a demo disc that they came out for Panzer Dragoon Saga,
right?
And I'm pretty sure the demo disc is pretty much all of disc 1. So I've played pretty much of all disc 1 of Saga. I can remember it like being like really like dark. I don't know if my TV settings are wrong, or it's just like it looked sort of old sort of thing. So, but everyone says it's like most probably the best RPG you've never played because no one can actually play it.
Yeah, and the console didn't have an amazing amount of RPGs. I think it was the Luna series on there.
Yeah,
the Shining Force games.
Yeah, there's a few Shining games.
There was no Phantasy Star, I don't believe, which is a shame because that's one of my favourite Sega ones.
Yeah, it was really weird. Like you had no proper, proper Sonic.
Did they port Luna?
I don't know if that got on there or not, but you had no proper Sonic. You had like no obviously Phantasy Star, and there was no Streets of Rage,
which were all their biggest franchises at the time.
And you had no Golden Axe.
No.
You said like all the stuff that they had on Mega Drive that. Yeah,
it was popular, yeah.
Popular. No, the Saturn actually.
Yeah, there's no Afterburner, no Space Harrier, nothing like that. No Altered Beast, and
no new Outrun. They had like the collections and stuff, but
yeah, they really struggled in that. They really struggled in particular with platformers were a big struggle. I don't think until like games like Gex got ported to it later on did it really have a true platform. Obviously, it had Tomb Raider, which was a good version. It was actually built for Saturn.
Yeah,
and then they were persuaded to make for PS1 because obviously Saturn wasn't doing so hot. But yeah, it's a very strange console. I personally like it. I think to talk about collecting, I think it's probably
the worst of the 5.
I think it's the worst of the 5, but probably the best if you want one of the weird 3 because of its position in the middle. I think if you were interested in a really obscure console from this era, an early CD-ROM console, the Saturn is very reliable, very very reliable, and is not that hard to get hold of. It can be expensive. But
I think the system's
it's about £100 for a good one. But like, there's loads of them. There's, you know what I mean. And getting a Japanese one's really simple. Getting an American one's simple. We just need a step.
And playing imports is easy.
Imports is easy, and that's what we're going to talk about. Actually, the reason to get a Saturn is Japanese imports.
Yeah.
Now they have some great games that you'd need to get repros for. So Police Noughts and Snatcher actually came.
Yeah.
In Japan, so those are beautiful, beautiful cases they have as well. But you can get those quite easily reproed. The Saturn will run unsigned code pretty easily. It's pretty easy to hack a Saturn to run. Again, it's just getting the ROMs and all that kind of stuff. But I've seen reproduction carts of Police Noughts and Snatcher with English language. If you can speak Japanese, you should already have a Saturn because I think it has enough games, certainly to run hundreds of fighting games and visual novels and RPGs and stuff that came out only in Japan. Yeah. And obviously, for me and you, Police Noughts and Snatcher would be the two that we'd want to play.
Yeah, I would definitely want to play them.
Over here, if you're going to have a just PAL collection, the PS1's a better console.
Yeah.
And the 3DO and Jaguar are more interesting. But if you want a weird one, I would recommend a Saturn.
It's a weird one, the Saturn, because obviously I had a Mega Drive we talked about first on like the last podcast. And I always remember like saying to I think I said to like my uncle, I want a Saturn or something. I can't remember what year this must have been. It must be not. I want to say it was 95, but and he was like, nah, you don't want a Saturn. It's already dead. What you want is a PS1, and then I just got a PS1.
Well, when we get to PS1, I have a similar story.
And this is mostly 95 and 96, and my uncle was like, because I most probably the reason I wanted Saturn because I presume I was reading like Sega magazines or something, or because obviously I was a Mega Drive kid, so I presume I was buying Sega magazines. Well, so I was like, I want this, I want the Sega system, new Sega system.
Well, Saturn actually had a pretty big advertising campaign in Europe because Sega was obviously Mega Drive was the biggest thing in console gaming for that gen for Europe, in the UK in particular. And Saturn did actually have quite a big UK presence. Like I said, the biggest problem just didn't have a tempo. It just didn't have a tempo. If it had a Sonic game, if Sonic Extreme had come out, or if they just made a bigger version of Sonic Jam, I think it would have done really well. Even if they just ported some of the Mega CD stuff, like if Sonic CD was on it, it's just something they could have done. Even Knuckles KX, just having a Sonic game would have been big for the console. I think that was the big problem with it. But like we said, if you want to collect one now, I think they're a pretty decent price. Just depends what you want. And
it's just I think all the good games.
Yeah, a lot of the better games are better on PS1.
Or the decent exclusives are just going to cost you too much money.
Yeah, if you want it Pandragoon, you're paying 40-50 quid for
the Shinings and stuff.
The Shining games, as great as they are as well, and you will need that action. But again, Japanese games, the Saturn.
Yeah.
So the penultimate one, the one that we had, I suspect,
Yeah.
is the Sony PlayStation, which came out in Japan in '94, but for everyone else came out in September '95, which was when the Saturn was originally going to come out.
Yeah.
Now the PS1 is very interesting now because PlayStation is arguably the second biggest gaming company in the world.
Yeah.
Really, realistically, I'd say Nintendo is still probably more well known.
Yeah.
But PlayStation is the second biggest brand in gaming at the time. Sony was no different to Panasonic. You know what I mean? They were no different to Philips. They were just a tech company. So it was big. They obviously had the failed deal with both Nintendo and Sega.
Yeah.
Trying to get CD stuff, and we'll talk about that. I think we talked about it in the last one. But
Yeah.
the PlayStation came out here in '95. The PlayStation came out at $300, which was cheaper than everything else bar the Jaguar.
Yeah. Because I always remember the fight. It was like the first E3, and the bloke from Sony just like that's all their conference was. He walks on stage, he goes $299.
Yeah, so
and he walks right off the stage. That's their conference. Like Sony's won.
So what happened is the day before the Saturn had announced, the Tom Kalinske from Sega America had come out and announced the Saturn was coming out like that day, and it was $399. And what they did for the Sony one is they had a business guy come out first and did a really boring graph, basically about like about 20-minute thing about like figures and stuff like that, and then the Sony of America guy literally came out on stage, said $299, walked off, big cheer. Sony have always been good at that, and that's why they always go last. I think that's why they've always done it, and they do it well. So yeah, it came out. It was a lot cheaper. It was a couple of years into it. The 3D was good. It actually had a really bad launch lineup. Launch lineup for the PS1 was actually not very impressive, but Sony was smart. They had it so you could play. Also, you had CD-ROMs. You could play music CDs. Yeah. And I remember in the UK that was big because the music scene over here at that point, the sort of like the weird '90s techno dance thing, was really taking off. And so a PlayStation was a good CD player and it had like the visual stuff. Yeah. I had like memory cards and stuff. But really, for me, I think the game that really the best-selling game is Gran Turismo 1. Over 10 million. Not 2. No, the first one is over 10 million sold, which is huge, big in Europe. For me, the first game that really hooked me into the PlayStation, when we talk about experience, is Crash Bandicoot. Yeah. Now, this is the thing at the time. At the time, no one argued with Nintendo when it came to platformers. But the PlayStation had 3 or 4 really good mascot platformers. Different series mascot, like Spyro the Dragon. Eventually you did get Gex, you know what I mean? You had like Ape Escape, which I know is slightly different, but you had games like that come over. And it was just a really good console for that. It was built for 3D. It did 3D running really well, so you got Ridge Racer, V-Rally was one of the first games I played on it. Driving games always looked great. And it was very cheap to make as well. It was cheap, easy to program for, Sony really helped everyone. And so you just had lots and lots of games, and it was one of the best-selling consoles of all time. Yeah, because the PlayStation sold on its own more than the gen before combined. Yeah, and it was just so I think good. This is the gen, like, I don't think gaming was sort of getting big with the Mega Drive and like the SNES and that, and then you had like the Super Mario movies and that. But I think like this gen is what made gaming like really big. And like my nan and granddad the other day went and saw Tomb Raider in pictures. Never played a game, but they know who Lara Croft is, sort of thing. Well, the thing about the PlayStation is it went for Sega's teenager demographic. Yeah. And even when Sega did it, like the Mega Drive was a 2D sprite game. Yeah. Sprite games, like in the most parts, it was hard to really catch like the cool edgy teenager. Whereas the PlayStation could have 3D graphics, could have FMVs, could have blood, could have these longer games with more intricate stories, like we talked about before. Yeah. The move away from arcade really helped Sony. They got some very key developers early on. They got Square, which is the big one. Yeah. The Final Fantasy series, which people really forget. That was the first official Final Fantasy game we had over here. We had Mystic Quest with a different name on NES, but like the first actual Final Fantasy was 7. It was huge in Europe. I remember at the time, like I was 7 years old. My best friend played it, and I remember going to his house and watching him play it, and I'd never seen anything like it. Like 3 discs, 7. It was just insane. Yeah. You had Metal Gear Solid, which was like a movie. Yeah, like it really was. No one had done games like that at the time, as well as the Crash Bandicoots. You had the fantastic driving games like Gran Turismo. No one did a game like that. No one did that simulation game with that much depth for driving. Like no one did. And it was just game after game after game. And like I said, it was so cheap to develop for. Yeah, and they had like the Japanese like support on it. You know, you had your Square, your Bandai, your Namco, Capcom put a lot of games on it. Yeah, and stuff like that. It's like Resident Evil was huge on it. Silent Hill. Resident Evil was massive. Silent Hill was massive. Castlevania was massive. You had stuff like Tony Hawk's taking off because it was that. Because it ran for quite a long time. The PS1. It ran for like 5 or 6 years as the main console. And it had that Jackass era stuff. Like me and you were young. Yeah. Teenagers, really, that time we were getting to that point, and like having Tony Hawk's and having just that kind of game, and having Tekken and having
Tekken 3 is so good.
It had the good arcade games as well. It could have its cake and it could eat it.
Yeah,
it was such a great console for that, and it was a move, because very quickly they actually dropped the price to $199 in America, which was about $149 over here. So it was very cheap. So I grew up, everyone had a PS1.
Yeah,
everyone had a PS1 because it was just so cheap. Your dad, like my dad, used to buy it, bought one, and played Tokka race driving on it.
Yeah.
He even tells me the story. The story of my experience of the PlayStation 1 is he went to the shop in 1997 to buy an N64 for us for Christmas. Me and my little brother, we were playing Super Nintendo at the time, so he went to get an N64 and he bumped into his friend and said, no mate, the PlayStation was £100 by that point. Yeah. This is the console you want to get. So Christmas Day 97 we had Sony PlayStation, Rayman, V-Rally, a memory card, and it was amazing. And Worms 2, as well. And it was just insane. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's really what, that turned most of the Sega kids over. Yeah. I will say. And a lot
like I was saying about me. Like, I was mostly reading Sega magazines, wanting the Mega Drive. My uncle had a Mega Drive. Said I wanted it at the time. My uncle's like, no, you don't want them. It's already dead. Mm-hmm. And you won't be able to get games. And then I remember my uncle turning up one night with a PlayStation 1. I had no games. I go to the video shop. I'm old. Yeah. Go to the video shop, renting Tomb Raider. I remember I was either 5 or 6. Tomb Raider was a 15. This is when no one cared about age rating.
It actually didn't have a PEGI rating. Had a film rating.
Yeah.
At that time, I believe.
Yeah, so when it rented Tomb Raider and bought a memory card, that's my first experience of the PS1.
And the PS1, is such a nostalgia console here in the UK, because if you play that, and I know we're named after a PlayStation. We began as a PlayStation podcast. Yeah. But the nostalgia of putting a PlayStation 1 on and hearing that familiar sound come up, so the PS1 was actually very unreliable as well. So I actually have the PlayStation was very unreliable. I bought PS1 years later for about £60. They did a smaller version. They had the DualShock came out by then. So it's a beautiful console, which I actually still have in the corner. It doesn't work, but I still have it in the corner. And they would just keep pumping out games, and Sony were just hitting it every time, and that's why when we get to the next one, we get to the PS2, they were just had such a market share by that point.
With things like PlayStation, it was easy to chip and stuff. I remember I had an Australian chipped one, so it was easy to
play. We had a chipped one. What it means by chipped is it could be modded to play unsigned code, and the reason it was so easy, because it was very easy to program for, and it was basically like a PC architecture almost, and it was so popular that people would make this sounds really silly, but it's actually easier to mod an American N64 to play Japanese games. You just cut some plastic out. But because the PlayStation was so popular, it was widely available. You could get it shipped. I remember my dad had a friend who was a policeman, so used to give us a list of games and would go and pawn. That's how I played Crash Team Racing. Obviously, the PlayStation 1 was the first console that had readily available RGB SCART, which made games look really clear. Even today, if you want to play a PS1 on a PS1, totally get an RGB SCART cable. It costs about £2. It was, like I said, it was the most popular console. So remember that everyone made memory cards. Yeah. Remember that everyone made controllers. I've got an Electronic Boutiques controller. I've got a fighting controller with the trigger buttons on the front. Yeah. And everyone made Mad Cats were huge at the time, really making stuff like that. And it was just a great console because it was so popular.
Yeah, it was I was saying the Saturn, I can't remember seeing Saturn games to rent in the video shop. PS1 games,
and they were cheaper. And that's the thing as well.
And I used to just go in there and rent games.
When we talk about the next console, the PS1 games, because they were CD, were a lot cheaper to buy. I remember games coming out at $39.99, $29.99, $19.99, because it was so cheap for companies to make these games that you could keep. And that's ultimately why it won, was the CD drive. Yeah. Overall, in terms of collecting PlayStation 1, it's actually a funny one, because I would totally say yes, collect PS1, but of all these consoles, it's probably the easiest one to play the games elsewhere now, because almost all those games are available on every other Sony platform, or they've had remakes, or they've had enhanced ports. So Metal Gear Solid, you can get, I know it's different, but you can get the GameCube version, or you can get the PS1 version on PSP, PS Vita, PS3. You know what I mean? Same for Final Fantasy 7. Actually, there's an enhanced port on PS4. Final Fantasy 9, enhanced port on PS4. Tomb Raider, all these games are available elsewhere. There was a couple big games that are kind of hard to get hold of. To be honest with you, they don't really come to mind because, like, stuff like Wild Guns didn't really. It's kind of hard to get. Wild Arms, sorry, it's kind of hard to get over here. And
Symphony of Night.
Symphony of Night is very expensive.
But you can actually get it on other systems. Like I own Dragon X Chronicles on PSP, which has Symphony of Night.
I have Symphony of Night on my Xbox One via Xbox 360. It cost me £2. So, like, you can get. It's probably the most readily available console. Over in here, it had really nice game cases that were plastic clamshell, and so. They, generally speaking, are pretty easy to get complete in box. PS1's one of the easiest consoles to get complete in box, actually, other than the Mega Drive, probably.
Yeah.
And the discs were quite resilient. The black bottom CD discs were quite resilient, so if you got one, it probably was going to play now. Memory cards can be a little bit hit and miss. Like the unofficial ones tend to break quite a lot, tend to corrupt data. But again, I've not really ever had an issue with PS1 memory cards. The thing about PS1, if you're going to collect PS1, you probably want to get a PS2 or PS3 to play those games because it's backwards compatible and why not have a console that can play two types of games instead of one? But overall, I'd say if you want to collect a retro game from the 5th gen, the cheapest, safest option is the PS1. Yeah. And it has a lot of games to play. There's just so many games.
There's stupid amount. Like, and then if you start looking at Japanese imports, you got hundreds.
We've been on this before, and I always try and be unbiased because I'm not a big Sony guy. I openly say I'm not a big Sony guy. I was really into the PS1, but I was never a big PS2 fan, PS3 fan, even PS4. But the PS1 is that good that it really, if you're going to collect a 5th gen console that has the most bang for your buck, it is the PS1.
Yeah, the weird thing with the PS1, and it's only sort of like thinking about it now, we're talking about like the best games, and I go, what my favourite PS1 games are: Metal Gear Solid, Silent Hill, Resident Evil 2, Tekken 3, Crash and that. None of them are actually really Sony first party games.
No, Sony's first party was weird.
I suppose at the time Crash Bandicoot would have been considered first party, but it had a lot of exclusives, mainly due to
third party exclusives, second party exclusives.
Mainly due because one Saturn was dead and the other one was too expensive to make games for. So it basically was like everything was on it by default.
Yeah, they were smart. They watched the mistakes of the 3DO and the Jaguar.
Yeah.
And put basically it's almost like a weird hybrid, the best of all three of the ones that came before it.
Yeah.
Really.
Because if you think of Sony now, like the PS4, like they got so many first party like studios, like they're great. But I think PS1,
they did publish a lot of those games.
Yeah,
like they did publish Crash, and I think they published Metal Gear as well,
Spyro,
and even Final Fantasy. I think. I mean,
I think they published it.
You can for like true exclusives stuff like Siphon Fit was great. Ape Escape's great.
Yeah, they have got them. It's just I don't really think of
Apes Odyssey,
I don't really think of PS1 like Sony exclusives on the PS1.
No, the PS1 was just the overall.
Well, like on saying it on like Saturn, I think of like Panzer, Shining, and the next console I think of their games on it. But I don't really think of Sony things when it comes to PS1.
I always think the winner always has that. Like if you look at like PS2 is probably the same, and same with like 360. Like the consoles that were massive were like multi-platforms are like the bread and butter, especially the later we got. But yeah, that's really the PlayStation. I think we're both in agreement. It's probably the best console this generation.
Yeah,
arguably. I know people on the forum might not like that, but overall, I think the PS1 is by far the best for what you can get. It has every genre.
Yeah.
Now, the last console of the 5th generation was probably the most anticipated console of the generation.
Yeah.
Arguably, and that is the Nintendo 64, the Ultra 64 as was before.
Yeah.
Came out in Japan in 96 and came out in the West in 97. So it's 2 years after the PlayStation.
Yeah.
Let's say about 2 years after the Saturn as well. It came out at $199. It was the cheapest one because obviously it came out so late.
Yeah.
But I think it came out and it was cartridge based. That's the problem. So
yeah, so Square suddenly they have a prototype of Final Fantasy VII on the N64. As soon as it was cartridge based, right, we can't make our game on your system. We're going to go to PlayStation.
So we'll get to that. We'll get to the problem in a minute. So we'll talk about the good things first. So in terms of raw power, the N64 is actually incredibly powerful. Yeah, actually more powerful than the PS1.
Yeah.
The polygons per second, the textures, all that kind of stuff is absolutely colours, everything. Absolutely amazing. Only one thing it doesn't do.
Yeah.
It only outputs in composite. That is its best output. Is composite video or S video if you're in America is the best one. Doesn't do SCART. Nowadays that's a big problem. And we'll get to that when we get to collecting. But at the time, okay, so it was cartridge based. Cartridge did have some advantages. So it stopped games getting hacked.
Yeah. And
loading times were basically non-existent on the console.
Save onto cartridge.
you could save onto cartridge. You didn't need a memory card. It came with 4 controller ports, which is basically the high point of the console. So you didn't have to buy a multi-tap or anything else. None of the other consoles had 4 ports, so fair play to them on that. It was built for multiplayer. Yeah. Very strange controller. The famous 3 Trident controller. I actually have no problem with the controller. I played N64 yesterday with a friend for like 2 hours. Had no problem with the controller. I think if you go in and you don't know how to hold it, that's the problem. Once you figure it out, it's fine. Had stuff like expandable parts of the controller, so you could have rumble and save. You could put memory cards in if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Overall, had the best-selling game was Super Mario 64. It was 11.6 million. It's actually the best-selling single first-party game of this generation.
Yeah.
And that sums up the console. So the console's big thing is Nintendo games.
Yeah.
You buy an N64, and you bought an N64 at the time for Nintendo games.
Yeah.
And now you would collect one for Nintendo games. So it had Ocarina of Time, one of the best games of all time. Majora's Mask, one of the best games of all time. Super Mario 64, one of the best games of all time. The rare games like Perfect Dark, GoldenEye, Banjo-Kazooie, Conquest Bad Fur Day, all outstanding. Mario Kart 64, Super Smash Bros. Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2, Pokemon Snap. You had the Mario Party games were fantastic.
Mario Golf, Mario Tennis.
All the Camelot sports games were great. All of those games are Nintendo games. Had Kirby Crystal Shards, had F-Zero X, Paper Mario, all these games.
Star Fox 64.
Star Fox, Lylant Wars for our friends here in the UK.
Yeah.
If you're on the forum listening to this and you clearly know about the N64, you know everything, same as everything since and before, Nintendo games are why you buy an N64.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, just about all of them are brilliant.
Yeah.
There's a couple of bad ones. Just about all of them are brilliant.
From an N64, when we did the console vote a few years ago, before the Wii U game, N64 won best console.
So I can imagine the reason it won best console was because of the games.
Yeah. But it almost won, strangely, worst console as well. A couple of people on there voted for it did not like it at all. I remember they had problems with the controller. Didn't think the graphics hold up as well, and they didn't think the games hold up. Personally, I think nearly all the games hold up pretty well.
We'll go through our experience first, and then we'll do the roundup because actually it's a very interesting point you make. So from our experience, like I said, I actually didn't have an N64. I wanted one. I always wanted one. I borrowed one for a month, which my dad swapped our PS1 with a friend's N64 for a month. I think he wanted to do it full time, but my mum was like, "What are you doing?" So I actually only played Banjo-Kazooie, WCW NWO Revenge, and there was one more game. I think it was Wipeout 64. It wasn't a great game, whatever it was. And they were the only games I played on N64 at the time. Always wanted one, didn't buy one until last month, which I bought one very cheaply for £6, and I love it. So that's my experience with N64. From what I played of it at the time, I loved WCW NWO Revenge. It was fantastic. I loved Banjo-Kazooie. But that's really it. None of my friends really had N64s. They were all PS1 guys. Like I said, there was more. I played more Saturn than I played N64 at the time. I played more Jaguar than I played N64 at the time. So yeah, that's really it. I know you probably have a little bit more.
Yeah, my nan won one in an Andrex competition.
No, that is a claim to fame right there, Chris McGill. You are one of the luckiest people as well, by the way.
Yeah.
He gets this stuff all the time.
Yeah, so my nan won an N64. I got it she kept it back for Christmas. So I got that for Christmas. And my uncle that year bought me an N64 game. And he bought me Star Wars, Shadows of the Empire. Remember, 60.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. See, this is the thing. It's I forgot a few other bits from my uncle on that. But the reason it was just that one game, because 64 games were 60, 70 quid
because of the cartridge.
Because of the cartridges. So I remember. I don't know what year it was though, because I think I remember renting Ocarina of Time from the video shop, but then that was 99, wasn't it, for Ocarina of Time, I believe. And that's just too late, because the house we were in at the time when I got my N64, Ocarina of Time would have not been out.
Yes, that's 98. I can confirm it was November 21st, 1998.
No, what was it in Europe?
I think it's everything, isn't it?
No, I think it was later in Europe.
December.
So
yeah, it was 98.
I don't know. Yeah, but see, to me that doesn't add up for the house we were living in at the time.
And plus, you got to remember you were 8 or 9 years old, so your memory's not going to be.
No, but I know what house I got. So I don't know if I actually did play that at the time or not. But I definitely remember playing Super Mario 64.
Yeah.
And not actually liking it. This is the thing.
To be fair, I've known you for like 3 years, and every time there's a popular game, you tend to not. So
no,
shout out to the Breath of the Wild fans out there.
No, like I had my PS1, and my platform was for Crash, Spyro.
Yeah, that's fair.
Obviously with the DualShock controller, well, at the time it wasn't even DualShock, I don't expect. And obviously get this N64 with like this weird ass controller, and like I don't know, it's like Mario's like this big open platformer, where like obviously Crash is like more like level based and stuff. And still at the time, if I was like 6, 7, 8 or something, I don't know if like the game was like too complicated, if that kind of makes sense. So I didn't really play Final Fantasy 7 exactly for like a 7-year-old. I was playing like your Spyros, your Crashes, your Tekkens, and
so you're admitting you were a bit simple, Chris.
Well,
I think with a game like that, to be fair to you, I think the reason I think it's so beloved, I mean, it's Mario 64 is a great game.
Yeah. It's in my 25 games of all time because I've played it since, and it's amazing.
If you'd got the N64 and that was like your only game, I think you adapt to it. And if you didn't have a PS1, like the stories I always hear from people talk about, especially like my American friends, that it launched with basically just that and Pilot Wings, I think, and that was like the only game they had for like 6 months, and so they would force themselves to play it. Like that's the only console they had. But you're right, it's a very different game and it was a different game to anything that come before it, and that was why it's so revolutionary. The thing is that when we'll get into it now. So the reason I think that it's the best and the worst console on like the forum chats and stuff is because the individual games are all timeless. The Ocarina of Times, your Mario 64, even Mario Kart 64 are so timeless and they're good. You can play them now and they're great. Yeah. But the console isn't. Yeah. So the console's the biggest two problems is the cartridge-based stuff makes it expensive. Yeah. Too expensive. And that was the biggest thing. Too expensive.
Well, I remember. Like, even now, the games some obviously are cheap expensive, but I remember Resident Evil 2, it came out $69.99 on N64, and it was a Platinum game on PS1 for $19.99.
And it was $29.99 on Dreamcast, which was a superior console. Yeah. So it's, you know what I mean? But it was that, and it has terrible, terrible video output. And that, I really experienced that over the last couple of days. I've been playing it with a friend of mine that came down to visit, and playing a composite console in 2018 on a 50-inch TV is absolutely disgusting. It just doesn't bring through a correct level of crispness, because obviously there's a difference between resolution and picture clarity, and composite is just awful. RGB SCART is where you want to go with retro consoles. You can at least see what's going on, and it really struggles to make the games hold up. Had really bad, almost all the games had horrendous frame issues, despite how powerful the console was, just because they had to cram and compress so much into those cartridges. Like some games, like the Torah games, they just run terribly unless you have. I think
GoldenEye
runs like 7 frames a second. Like honestly, like play that 4-player multiplayer, it's like 7, 8, 9. Like it's amazing we managed to play that at the time. But again, you can get the expansion port for certain games, and like Perfect Dark looks great. But yeah, I mean that's why.
And it had no third party. It did have fun, but like you're talking about like the
PS, like Hudson Soft. You're
talking about like the PS1, like it had RPGs coming out. Like
RPGs, there was 2, wasn't there? It was Quest 64, which was terrible.
And Paper Mario.
I was 3 then, because Ogre Battle, which was okay, and then there was Paper Mario, which was amazing. But then, like we said, it's first party. Yeah. The first party games are all amazing. It's
such a really fun.
You know, like Lightning Wars. I remember playing Lightning Wars in Curry's and being like, "This is amazing."
No, but my real, like I said, my NAM won. I think I can't remember. I must have sold it or traded it in or something because I just didn't like it. But then when we had the shop, I had an orange N64.
That was another thing we didn't talk about. Is they had the Fantastic series. They had loads of different. Nintendo have always done like different variants really well, and the N64 was beautiful. I had the Pikachu one, which was great. Yeah, I had all the coloured ones.
So I had the orange one, and like I had the full set controllers. And at one point, I followed it a few years ago, I had like a 50-60 game collections for the N64, nearly all boxed as well. But it was like 50 games, and that's all you would ever want on the 64 because it was like all exclusive. It's got like 200 games, but it was like, yeah, that's it. And the problem now is nearly all of them are on something else. It's the same problem with PS1.
Almost every single. I mean, this gen is like, because it's so easy to port these games now because they use such low memory. A lot of them have had remakes as well for the N64 in particular. Like almost all the big ones have, really, if you think about it. Like the multiplayer ones haven't really, because there's just no point.
Yeah. See, that's the other thing. It's like Smash Bros is good on like the melee tops there, double dash top 64.
Yeah, that's the Nintendo trail.
Yeah. So like those sort of games you want to play, like the better, like the superior, like the newer superior versions, and then Ocarina of Time, you want to play Ocarina of Time 3D, really.
Yeah.
Or you play it on like the GameCube, so you can have like a different video output, for instance.
Well, the video output is the big thing for me. So like Ocarina of Time is on the GameCube and stuff like that. You can get them on the collection.
That's the first time I played Ocarina of Time.
I'm exactly the same. I played it with my Wind Waker double disc that I got.
And the first time, like when I got the shop, I was shopping at the Orange. It's like the first time I played 64, and I was like, I get why Mario 64 is like so good, and it's like in one of my top 25 games of all time.
I didn't finish that game until I got the DS version on 3DS because I could use the stick on 3DS. I know the N64 version is better, but that's the first time I actually beat the game. So overall, I think the N64 is totally the second best library of games. And arguably has more.
It has the best exclusives.
It probably has the higher percentage of great games.
Yeah.
Like the great to shit ratio on the N64 is higher than the PS1.
It's higher than all
the PS1 just has more choice.
Yeah. And like I said,
more
choice of genres.
Yeah, exactly. Which I think
if you want a racing game, you have the Crash Team Racing, or you have a Gran Turismo.
You don't just have Volkswagen Beetle Racing and Mario Kart 64 and Diddy Racing and stuff. We haven't talked about the 64 DD, which is because it's very little to talk about. It was an add-on that only came out in Japan very late in the life cycle. Added a lot of power, but they just did like 10 games, and that was only
Doshin and Animal Crossing.
Animal Crossing, and again that was mostly Japan. It actually was all Japan.
They both came to GameCube.
And everything came to GameCube, pretty much apart from the F-Zero track editor. But I think that was in GX. But that's why I played GX.
And they had a Mario like Paint stuff.
They had Mario Paint and music stuff and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, the N64 was strange. So when it comes to collecting, so this is
it's the worst of the 5.
Wow, I disagree on the worst of the 5. Because an N64 is not expensive to get hold of. I got hold of one for £6 because people thought it was broken. Yeah. Tip: if you want to buy, if someone's listing it as 64 as broken,
it won't be broken,
and it powers up, it's not broken.
Yeah.
Or it's very rarely broken.
Yeah,
right? So you can get an N64 at a reasonable price for about 30. I think you could get one for a good one for 30. Yeah. Not with a controller. But you can get controllers fairly cheap as well. Third-party controllers are fine as well. Even now, people make them great. The main games are actually quite cheap if you don't mind car only. So this is the big issue that we had earlier with the Jaguar and the Saturn. The cardboard boxes. So if you want a complete good condition collection, N64 is very expensive and it's not worth it. Because you can get Majora's Mask on 3DS with better graphics in a case for half the price.
Yeah.
And this is the problem, I think. If you want to
buy a cheap used 2DS for like 60 quid or something as well. Yeah.
Although, because they've shut down the Wii shop and Wii U doesn't have the same level of support because it doesn't have a GameCube adapter that you can actually use, for multiplayer I still think the N64 is worth it. I think Mario Party 1, 2 and 3, Mario Tennis, GoldenEye, Perfect Dark are still good ways to play the game.
The only thing is I would sooner play like Mario Kart Double Dash and Smash and Melee.
I agree, but if you're nostalgic for the 64, then I think for multiplayer, 100% is worth it. Mario 64 still holds up. The big issue, like I've been going on about, is the video output is poor, and that's the only real issue. So if you have a Wii and you have the games, like my best friend has the Mario Party games on his Wii from when we were at university, having the console output in a clear thing and playing it that way is better.
Yeah.
If you just want to play Mario 64, but you want to play the 64 version, although the Wii U version hasn't got amazing emulation, it's good enough to play, or you can play the DS version. But I think that's the biggest problem with the 64, and to an extent the PS1, is all the best games have been put somewhere else. So for collecting, that can be an issue. On the plus points, the multiple colours of console and controller are very interesting to collect for.
Yeah.
Hasn't got a huge library of games.
There's only 200
has some rare games, has like your clay fighters and stuff that you just won't get. It's not worth the money. It's very interesting to have on your shelf and stuff. And like I said, it's reliable, it will work. But I think if you're going to collect one, I would definitely choose the PS1.
I think the PS1's the easiest to collect for, and I think that's why I said it was the worst. I think the 64 is the hardest to collect for, because I think if you're really gonna, think about collecting and just not playing, I think you're gonna want boxes and stuff.
Yeah.
Because if you want to play N64 games, you're going to be able to do that on a Wii U or a 3DS, or you might have had them already. But if you want to collect 64, I think it is the hardest one because you're going to want it all boxed and nice.
I mean, there is obviously alternate options. Obviously, Rose Colour Gaming do their plastic clamshell cases, and if I'm honest with you, if you're going to get 100% N64 collection, that's what I would do, because I just don't personally think
that's how I've got. I haven't got I got like a cheaper sort of plastic off my
Yeah.
Zelda Game Boy games, for instance.
Yeah, like I would totally that's the way. And Rose Game actually do replacement cases for Super Nintendo as well.
Yeah.
Which is probably worth it. But like I would say overall, PS1 for me it would go PS1, Saturn, Jag, 64, 3DO. I think 3DO is. I love the 3DO and I love the Jag as well. But I love the 3DO. It's just the console's too expensive, and the games just there isn't. Although the N64 has their games elsewhere, those games are still good quality, and that's probably the big issue I think with 3DO. But overall, I think this gen, for me, is really the start of modern gaming.
Yeah,
it has a lot of the a lot of the consoles had basic internet. I mean, the Saturn in particular had a really good, even still works, I believe, in Japan, has internet connectivity. Had the add-ons are starting to die out. Only really the Jaguar and the 64 had like real add-ons, like actual hardware add-ons. There's stuff you could put on the other consoles, but real. That kind of thing. CD drives were basically the way forward beyond this. Everything used DVD or GD-ROM after this, in the gen after. The shying away from the arcade really was from 93 to 99. Very, very apparent in these consoles. Like from the earliest consoles, very arcadey. And then you look at the PS1 and the N64, and then very
PS1, it was games you sat down and played for the story.
Yeah.
And that. So.
As for what holds up the most, I would say PS1. Is that fair? Holds up the most.
Yes.
Gameplay.
No.
It's if we were just talking about consoles, if we were talking about if you're not playing them anywhere else, I think PS1.
Yeah.
If you can play them anywhere else, I think the N64 games are playable.
Yeah, now. I think this is the thing. Like, it depends what 64 game, because I think Mario 64, due to the art style, obviously its gameplay, it still holds up. But GoldenEye, I had no problem playing, but I think due to
I can't play it.
I think due to the frame rate and stuff like that, I think things like that don't hold up.
We tried to play,
but there isn't that many games like that. Though most of them are colourful
Nintendo art styles.
So they hold up, because if you look at something like Resident Evil 1, that does not really hold up. 2 just about holds up, I think, on the PS1, but 1 doesn't.
Yeah, and even then, you'd play that on GameCube if you're going to play on a retro console. Yeah. I think Paper Mario is probably the best looking game on all the consoles.
Yeah, it's just due to the art style, I think. But if the gameplay is good enough, like in Final Fantasy 7 or something, it does. You can kind of get away with it.
And obviously, it's overall, I think it's it's my third favorite gen.
Yeah, I was really hard. I know what the next gen is my favourite.
It's my favourite as well. But we'll talk about the 6th gen.
But I don't know, it's between this and most probably the Mega Drive.
The 7th is my second.
Yeah, I do. See, I'm not sure if the 7th is that actual good.
The 7th is my second because I played a lot of games. And when we get if and when we get to that chat, we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
Overall, my favourite console of this gen is the PS1.
Yeah, same here.
Although I love the N64, and I've only owned one since I was 28, so it's not like I can.
Yeah.
I'm not the guy to chat to about that. Saturn's actually pretty close. The Saturn may even be above the 64 for me, which is weird, I know, but I won't upset too many formites by
the 64 would most probably have top 10 consoles of all time. It's definitely up there due to its quality of games.
Yeah, the game quality is the best. I think this gen is is really the beginning of the 3D takeover as well, and the games
it definitely showed the big leap from 2D to 3D.
Exactly. In the whole, I don't think this gen holds up as much as the next one, but that's natural. I think the next one is the most hold up retro console stuff before. Obviously the 2D ones do as well, but that's our fifth gen chat.
Yeah,
it's only a solid hour and 10 minutes, Chris. For us, it's pretty good. Next episode will not be in 7 months' time. It'll probably be in the next couple of weeks, and will be the Dreamcast special.
Yeah, we definitely want to do Dreamcast on its own.
Yeah, we've got too much to talk about.
Yeah,
it's one of those things.
I own over 200 games.
You have 200 games for it. It's probably one of my favourite consoles of all time.
Yeah.
I've got magazines. We've got a lot of games and stuff. We can go through.
Bring out my magazines.
So we'll definitely do a Dreamcast special. It's the 20th anniversary of the Japanese release this year, so we will talk about the Dreamcast. Everyone's gonna hate that because Sega, but. And then we'll do the rest of the 6th gen chat, which is the GameCube, the Xbox, and the PS2. And to be fair, we have a lot to talk about with those as well, which is why I wanted to, because I think we would have done a 2-hour podcast if we'd done the other 3. And we haven't got time for a 2-hour podcast. But yeah, if you like what you hear, you want to chat to us at any point, please follow Chris at Masofdas on
that's correct.
Twitter, and Massive Bio has on YouTube. Or
no, it's
Masofdas. You've officially got Masofdas on YouTube.
It should be.
I must say it every episode.
Yeah.
You follow me at EOFGizmo everywhere.
Yeah.
Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, whatever. And we'll be back in the future. So
We
have a
will do.
lovely,
Enjoy.
lovely day.
Enjoy.